Risks of buying a car out of state. Hi, I'm Kevin Hunter, the homework guy, here today with the amazing Elizabeth to talk about the risks of out-of-state car purchases. As promised, we have our attorney friend Dan Whitney with us to discuss a couple of out-of-state car purchases where clients hired him to represent them when things went bad. You see, there are risks.
And in both cases, the client was lucky to find someone like Dan Whitney to represent him.
Well, you know what? I want to say something really quick. Dan is such a good guy that we recently had a viewer who had a problem with a dealer who is committing fraud, falsely badged a vehicle, and we got that information to Dan, and Dan found an attorney in his area and sent that referral down to him. So that's what kind of guy Dan Whitney is.
Yeah, way to go, Dan.
All right, Dan, it's all you. Take it away.
Kevin, thanks for having me on your channel. I always appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate your help in getting the word out with what I'm doing professionally. So what we're going to talk about today is the problems that can happen when buying a car out of state. Now, everybody uses the internet to look for cars, and everybody wants to find the best deal, but there's a cost to all of this. And the question is, there's a couple questions. One is, how much time is it worth to go online and search for days, weeks, maybe months, just to find the best possible deal you can and maybe save $1,000 or $2,000?
True.
That all comes down to actually what is your time worth. That's the first issue when dealing with, searching forever to find just the right deal. And if it's out of state, are you going to go travel out of state to do this? Because that includes a whole bunch of risks. I've handled a lot of cases involving people who have traveled out of state to buy cars, and if they end up calling my office, something is not going correctly. So, the things to think about generally before buying a car out of state are this. One, if you go out of state, wherever it is, the dealer you're buying from is not as familiar with doing the registration and titling to the state DMV or MVA where you live. So that alone, that may cause some friction. It's not going to be a normal transaction. That's one. The second and bigger problem that people don't seem to realize is if you go out of state, and the farther you go, the worse this is. If you drove, hours upon hours to get somewhere, or God forbid you get on a plane and you fly somewhere, once you arrive, and they know that you are a sitting duck as far as what your options are. They've got the leverage. You've just come in from a long ways away out of state, and there's this car you want, and what you were told in the beginning as far as price and condition may not be exactly what you see once you get your feet on the ground on the dealership lot and see the vehicle.
Might be a familiar story.
The same condition?
Yeah.
Is it the same price? And I've represented a number of people in both past and current cases where traveling out of state has been a disaster. Probably the case, the first case I handled like this, a Maryland resident who we actually represented in another matter involving him buying a house and the condition of the house being terrible with termite damage that wasn't detected and all that. We were representing him in that case, and then he ended up looking for a vehicle online, and he wanted a new pickup truck. And so he searched everywhere, and he thought that he had found the best deal. It was about $1,500 less down in one of the Carolinas. And so he did his homework as best as any consumer could hope to do. He emailed, he reached out to the internet salesperson. They not only agreed on a price over text, but he was actually cautious enough to get a buyer's order sent to him and a finance contract sent to him that had I believe it was a 0% interest rate and a really good price with a bunch of rebates and discounts and everything. So he had it in writing. And if you're a consumer buying out of state or really anywhere, you might think, I've got it in writing. What could go wrong? The question is, there's a lot that can still go wrong, especially when you can't just get up, leave, and go drive back to your house 10, 20, 30 minutes away.
Sure.
So my client does as much due diligence as he possibly could. It's arranged, and the deal is you fly in, we'll pay for your ticket, we will pick you up from the airport, and we'll drive you to the dealership. It's going to be great. The paperwork's going to be ready. It's just what we talked about. You can get in your truck and you can go drive, 400 or 500 miles home, and you've got the best deal, and it's going to be great for everybody.
Sure.
So, of course, that's not what happened. So he flies down. They pick him up at the airport 20 minutes late, but whatever, things happen. He gets to the dealership, and he is presented with some paperwork with the finance contract. And he looks at it, and he looks at the paperwork that he was sent that he printed out, and the problem is the figures don't match. Instead of the price that was agreed upon and 0%, there's now, I think, 4% interest on the deal. And he says, hold on, there's been a problem. I've got a finance contract that was sent to me, and this is the numbers that were agreed upon. I've got the text. And so, of course, the finance manager speaks with the manager, and the message comes back, Mr. Smith, everybody knows you can't get 0% and all the rebates. Why would you think you could get that? Nobody can do that. He said, well, I thought that because that's what you told me, and that's what you put in writing, and that's what you texted me, and that's what I have on this contract you sent me. They said, no. That was our mistake, but we're not going to honor that.
Oh.
So my client, who is a large man, and I think in a past life may have been driven to violence by what was being done to him, controlled his temper for the good, for the benefit of everybody involved, and was furious, but he weighed his options, and the options were this: either take this bad deal, and you're paying 4% interest, which I think over the course of the loan shook out to maybe a total amount financed of several $1,000s, maybe $4,000 or $6,000, which he should not have had to pay, and of course his payments were going to be higher. It was either sign that and maybe do something about it later, or at least you get the truck you want and you can drive home, and maybe refinance later with a good credit union or a good lender, or find his way back to the airport, and they're not going to drive him back to the airport if he is not going to sign the paperwork, and then buy another plane ticket back, and they're not going to reimburse him for the first flight down.
Right.
So you're in a very tough position. You have essentially zero leverage. So what did he do? He did what probably just about everybody does when they fly in from out of state. He ended up signing the paperwork. He drove the vehicle back home, and he talked to us about it once he got back. And he said, this has all happened. What can we do? I said, well, send me all your documents. Let's take a look at it and see if we can do anything. And sure enough, texts, contracts, everything was there. All the representations had been made. So I said, okay, I think we can help with this. And we ended up filing a lawsuit up here in Maryland, served him down there. And within about 60 days, we worked it out where he got the benefit of, he got enough money to cover the interest that had been charged. In other words, he got paid on what the interest he had paid and what he would have to pay in the future on the loan. And they ended up paying his attorney's fees, and that worked the whole thing out. Now, did he get a bunch of money for his emotional distress and all that? He got a little bit, but not probably to the extent to make him happy regarding how furious he felt and wanted to do bodily harm to everybody involved. But the benefit of getting the case resolved, 60 days after the thing happened, after we filed suit, you got to compromise a bit. But the bottom line is, what he got the deal that he originally made the agreement for, and he had no out-of-pocket expenses. And the question was, Mr. Smith, can you live with this? And he said, you know what, all things considered, I don't want this to drag for a year, because that's how long these things can drag. If you can make me whole, then I'm happy. And so that's what ended up happening with that one. So that's a good lesson in, if you're really going to fly out of state, you got to ask yourself, is it worth it? What are the chances of the deal I'm being offered actually happening?
Yeah, good point.
It's not going to be 100%, I'll tell you that. It's going to be less than 100%, and you got to factor that into, if this whole thing goes south, is saving $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever that price online is it really worth it? That's a personal decision. Personally, I buy cars in Maryland. If something goes wrong, one, I buy cars where I have a relationship with the dealership.
love to see
and I
Dan
know
at the
things are
car
going to
lot.
go well. But if they do go south, I can file suit right in my own backyard, and I don't have to worry about it. But that's just me. That was the first case like this that I've handled. Now, the second case involving somebody who bought out of state and actually flew into Maryland is an ongoing case, and it happened during COVID when the dealers are doing everything they can to get every penny out of every car they have on their lot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in this situation, a gentleman from Ohio was searching for an Audi that was specially configured. Well, he didn't configure it, but it was a certain package that he wanted, and he found it at an Audi dealership here in the great state of Maryland. So this gentleman, smart guy, he did his homework as best he could, contacted the dealership, went back and forth on emails with the internet manager. The price was advertised to him, represented to him by the salesperson and advertised online for the sticker, which was, I think, maybe 60 something thousand. So he says, okay, that sounds great. I'm going to fly in on this specific day. And they say, okay, so all arrangements are getting made. And I think he left the morning he flew in. His flight was at 7 a.m. And that night, the night before, he contacted the internet sales manager and said, look, I just want to make sure my flight's tomorrow. I bought my ticket. Are we good at, this set of numbers with the sticker and tax tags, everything else? Yes, we are good. Okay, so
right.
he commits. He gets to the airport, takes the flight in, arrives at the dealership, before they really open, and he gets there and he says, hi, I'm so and so, and I'm looking for my salesman, Mr. Jones. Well, he's told Mr. Jones is not here today, and now you're going to be dealing with me by someone else who was there, another salesman. He says, okay, that's fine.
Oh.
And they say, okay, well, he says, I'm here to buy this specific car. I got it online. Here's, the screenshot of the price and the stock number and all this. It's okay, well, it's going to be sticker price plus $5,000. And we've added on some GPS tracking device. And, so really your total price is, let's say the sticker was 60. Your total price is going to be about, 65.5. And he says, no. We have this arrangement and this and that. And they say, no, well, listen, it's COVID, supply and demand. Certainly you understand that. And, the price of the car is now $5,000 more. And if you don't want it, I know you know where the airport is. You just came from there. So you tell me what you want to do. Because if not, we're just going to sell it to the next person. And, he really has no choice other than to drive or get an Uber or taxi or whatever back to the airport, buy another ticket, fly home, and continue his search. It's a terrible, unleveraged position that he's in. So he says, you know what? And he does his best to negotiate. He gets him down to about $2,000 over the sticker, and he ends up buying the vehicle, and he drives home. And once he gets home, this is all not sitting very well with him, so he looks online, finds us, calls, and we've accepted the case, and we'll be filing the lawsuit shortly. Because the law in Maryland is such that dealers are not allowed to advertise the price of vehicles without the intent to sell it. Now, that's for advertisements. Now, there's also a law that guides when the vehicle is just on the lot and the person comes to the dealership and they're looking at the vehicle and considering if they want to buy it. So what happens then is, of course, there's always the window sticker on the vehicle. But then there are requirements in Maryland that if there's any additional price increases over the window sticker, there has to be a special addenda. I believe it's a certain specific font. It has to be in close proximity to the window sticker. And the purpose of all this is so when a customer gets to the dealership and they see a vehicle they like, they see a price on it, and they can then decide before we get in, test drive, negotiate on it. They know what they're getting into.
Right.
It's not fair to have a window sticker say, okay, the MSRP is $60,000, and I say, okay, great, that's within my budget. I'm interested in this. I test drive it. We go down the road. We start going back and forth on it. We get some paperwork, and all of a sudden, I see that the price has been increased to $65. I've committed too much time now, and there's a good chance maybe they'll get me. But the whole point is that is unfair. It's totally unfair. So, and that is advertising something without the intent to sell it. So, in this situation, there's plenty of Maryland laws that apply. The Consumer Protection Act, the certain transportation code statutes. I think it's certainly fraudulent to say to somebody the day before they show up, yes, the vehicle is available, and then when he gets for the sticker price, and then when he gets there, say it's $5,000 more. One thing a lot of corporations in general like to say, and especially car dealerships, well, that was a different sales guy. I don't know what he said, but today this is what the deal is, and we're not bound by what he told you yesterday. And well, actually, you are bound because a corporation is bound by the words of its agents and its employees. That's how a corporation acts and commits itself and does business through its employees and its agents. So
That's
actually,
right.
yes, a dealership is bound by what their salespeople and finance managers say and represent to customers. So anyway, suit will be filed pretty shortly on that, and then when that resolves, I'm sure a video will get done because a lot of people are dealing with the same issue. Really, if you're going to be considering buying a vehicle out of state, really think to yourself, how much am I going to save? What is the risk of flying across the country or flying, 700 miles away? Is it worth it? And it's a personal choice. It depends on how willing you are to just, get up, use your legs, and walk out. It really just comes down to personal choice. So I hope this has all been helpful of painting a picture of the perils that can occur when you buy out of state. Certainly, some transactions go very well. Some groups, including those on YouTube, are able to facilitate these transactions and get them done with mostly no problems. And I wish you the best, and it's great, and I hope it all works. It's just things to consider for the average person when you're going somewhere. Is it really worth it? Is it really worth it? And that's a question you have to ask yourself. So, Kevin, thanks again for having me on your channel. It's always a pleasure to talk about these car cases with you. Keep up the good work, and I wish you the best. And thanks again. Take care. Bye.
All right, so that was Dan Whitney, our attorney friend from Maryland.
Yeah.
A couple of takeaways, Liz?
Okay, first off, I want to see Dan buy a car. Like, Dan, you need to get like a body cam and go to the dealership. I would just love to see how they react to you.
Yeah.
What you say to them.
The dealer suing professional shows up at the dealership.
Maybe wear a ball cap and glasses or something so they can't tell it's you.
Well, he said that he's doing business with dealers that he knows.
Sure.
And so those dealers have a little bit of a clue. This isn't the bear you poke.
Yeah, no joke. Well, and then don't forget what Dan said, that the dealership is responsible for what the car salesman and the finance officers say. He said by law, corporations are bound by what their employees and agents say to you.
And quite often, there's this old trick like this last dealership did, saying that, the salesman you talked to isn't here today, so now you're dealing with us, and we don't know what he said, but here's what we're saying, and they changed the story on you. You don't let them get away with that. The person that you talk to is a agent of the corporation, and what they say, the corporation is bound to.
Mm-hmm.
So, and to those of you who get put in a bad spot, remember that you can contact a consumer protection attorney like Dan Whitney to get it resolved. Also, you don't have to worry about legal fees because they are paid for by the offending dealership. A really important thing to know.
Totally.
To get more great content from Dan Whitney, be sure to visit his channel, Whitney LLP, appearing now on the screen, and subscribe today. I also want to say a word of thanks to the many viewers who have made contributions toward my medical expenses. Your help has been awesome.
So, Kevin, how are you doing? Like, what's your outlook now?
Well, still on oxygen at the moment, but it's improving constantly. Oxygen isn't cheap. It runs about $500 a month. I'm also going through hyperbaric chamber therapy right now, which is a form of high-pressure oxygen therapy. It's helping a great deal, but it also costs $330 a week, not covered by insurance.
Yeah, it sure adds up quick, doesn't it?
Yes.
So for our viewers' convenience, we've put the PayPal and Cash App links in the description box below. And right now, 100% of donations from viewers are going directly to Kevin's ongoing medical expense.
All right, if you appreciate our video today, consider giving us a great big thumbs up. And please always remember to comment on our videos and share them with your family and friends. Comments really matter because they help boost our online visibility and lead others to great Homework Guy content. And if you have encountered a situation like Dan described today, or you've been lied to by a dealership or their employees, who put you into a mess of a car deal? Tell us about it in the comment section below. We check those frequently. You might have a settlement coming, and if it looks like you do, we'll refer your situation to Dan, who will help you find an attorney in your area.
The entire Homework Guide team is here to represent you, the car buyer, and that's what we love to do.
Thanks, everyone, for coming back. We'll see you on our next video. You guys rock. I'm Kevin Hunter here with the amazing Elizabeth. We gotta go.